Hello and welcome back to the Wrestling Group. I am your host, as always, Ryan, and today we are going to be taking a look back at that time that NXT invaded Survivor Series. I am of course talking about the 2019 edition of the pay-per-view. So from 2016, WWE had rebranded Survivor Series to be more of a Raw vs SmackDown type of deal, rather than just having some matches and then having the traditional elimination tag matches, usually one from each brand. They wanted to use the pay-per-view as a bragging rights style pay-per-view where all of Raw's top talents went against all of SmackDown's top talents. WWE tried this years before with the 2009 pay-per-view titled Bragging Rights, but it never really took off. This though started to work. We would see both brands invade each other's shows in the build-up, trying to get the advantage, and we would also have both brands' champions face off against each other to see whose champions were the best. In 2019, however, WWE decided to add in NXT to the mix for that year's Survivor Series pay-per-view. Now, NXT at the time was fully into the black and yellow era, and in my honest opinion, was the best available for fans on a weekly basis. They had a stacked roster mainly of former indie stars, most of whom already had a following before arriving in the company, and they also gave the matches a lot more time than those on the main roster, and a lot of the time the storylines felt more fleshed out too. Led by Triple H and Shawn Michaels, NXT invaded SmackDown on a tank, of course, and set their sights on proving that they were the most dominant brand in sports entertainment. But the question is, did it pay off? Well, join me as we take a look back at the pay-per-view and the matches and decide if this truly is one of the greatest Survivor Series pay-per-views, or if in fact it was a dud. Were you a fan of the 2019 Survivor Series pay-per-view? Let me know in the comments section below, and don't forget to click that subscribe button while you do. So during this pay-per-view, we not only had the SmackDown vs Raw vs NXT traditional tag matches, we also had some of the champions face off against each other, and also each of the brand's main male titles were defended on the pay-per-view as well. So we'll start with the pre-match show matches and go into the main card. We'll take a quick look at each of the matches, and then at the end we will give an overall score for the pay-per-view out of 10. And of course you can play along too. You can always let me know your favourite matches of the night, your least favourite matches of the night, and of course also you can score the pay-per-view out of 10 all in the comment section below. So we'll start with match number 1 from the pre-show, which was Team Raw versus Team SmackDown versus Team NXT in a cross-brand tag team battle royal match. So Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson, the Street Profits, and Zack Ryder and Curt Hawkins represented Raw. The Revival, Heavy Machinery, Lucha House Party, and Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode represented SmackDown. Breezango, the Forgotten Sons, and Imperium's Marcel Barthel represented NXT. The rules for this one were pretty straightforward. Once one superstar was eliminated over the top rope, then their tag team partner was also eliminated. As soon as the match started, we had some early eliminations, as quite expected to be fair, and it wasn't long until NXT teams were completely out of the match. The OC and the Street Profits were left from Raw, and just Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode from SmackDown. Ziggler then eliminated the OC by super kicking Gallows over the ropes, and Bobby Roode eliminated Montez Ford, with SmackDown picking up the first victory of the night. Unsurprisingly, not a great match, but it was on the pre-show, so it didn't really matter all that much. Match number 2. NXT's Lio Rush versus Raw's Akira Tozawa versus SmackDown's Kalisto for the NXT Cruiserweight Championship. The action in this one was fast and furious early, with none of the three competitors establishing dominance. Lio thwarted a concentrated effort by the challengers to dethrone him, dropping them both with a double handspring elbow. A series of near falls ensued that Kalisto nearly picked up the victory and the title. He did manage to deliver the Salida del Sol, but a shining wizard from Tozawa broke up the pin. Tozawa then scaled the ropes and came off with a senton, but had his own pinfall attempt broken up by Kalisto. The action broke down and Kalisto dropped Tozawa with another Salida del Sol, and Rush followed up with the final hour on Kalisto for the pinfall victory, and Lio Rush retained his title, giving NXT their first win of the night. This was a really decent match, and it could have been better if they'd just been given a little bit more time. But all in all, it was a decent showing. Just a shame that the crowd that had actually arrived at this point didn't really seem all that bothered. Again, these are the pre-show matches, so the crowd is coming in at this point. And the third match was the battle of the tag team champions. We had the Raw tag team champions, the Viking Raiders, versus the NXT tag team champions, Kyle O'Reilly and Bobby Fish of Undisputed Era, versus the SmackDown tag team champions of Big E and Kofi Kingston of the New Day. Now, this match unfortunately was bumped off the main show to the pre-show due to time restrictions, but it was still a decent enough match to watch. To finish this match, Kingston launched himself off the top rope and wiped out Kyle O'Reilly, Fish and Ivar, while Big E blasted Eric with a nasty spear through the ropes. Kingston tried for the Trouble in Paradise on the floor, but caught the ring post instead, leaving the Viking Raiders and the Undisputed Era to renew their rivalry. Ivar dodged the high-low from the heel tag team, and the Raw team picked up the victory with the Viking Experience finisher, giving Raw their first win of the night. So match 4 was the women's traditional tag team match. Now this kicked off the main card, so now we're on to the official card of Survivor Series. Team SmackDown consisted of Sasha Banks, Dana Brooke, Carmella, Nikki Cross and Lacey Evans, while Team Raw consisted of Charlotte Flair, Asuka, Kairi Sane, Natalya and Sarah Logan. Team NXT was Rhea Ripley, Bianca Belair, Io Shirai, Candice LeRae and Toni Storm. Now, I did like the layout of this match, as one member from each team was active at any one time, so technically it was like a triple threat match in the ring throughout. A lot to unpack in the match, but this was really entertaining and the crowd got into it. There was a moment in the middle of the match where we got a few quickfire eliminations and sort of left you a bit like WTF, but other than that, a really strong showing from the women here. At one point, Candice LeRae and Io Shirai were both escorted to the back with injuries, leaving NXT at a disadvantage for a large part of the match. But they did return and help Rhea Ripley to gain the victory for their team. So this actually put NXT as a 2-1-1 on the scorecard for the night. Match number 5 was a battle of the mid-card champions. It seen Raw's United States champion AJ Styles take on NXT's North American champion Roderick Strong and SmackDown's Intercontinental champion Shinsuke Nakamura in a triple threat match. Now this was the match I was most excited for in the build-up, and did not disappoint, even if we had a little bit of outside interference from one Sami Zayn. Now the finish of this match was Nakamura dropped strong and set up for the Kinshasa, but Styles came from out of nowhere to drop his long-time rival with a big forearm. Nakamura dropped strong on Styles with his knees catching the US champion's face. Nakamura then blasted strong with a Kinshasa, but the Phenomenal One again broke up the pin. Moments later, Styles delivered the Phenomenal Forearm to Nakamura, and the opportunistic Strong slid into the ring, dropped the Raw competitor on the floor, and pinned Nakamura for the victory. Again, another NXT win on the scorecard. Now this then put NXT with 3 victories to Raw and SmackDown only having a single victory each. Now match number 6, seeing Adam Cole take on Pete Dunne in an NXT Championship match. Now both men had competed in a brutal War Games match just the night before at TakeOver, but this wasn't going to stop them here, even with Cole having his ribs taped up and Dunne his knee. Back-to-back bangers, as they say, this match continued where the last one left off, with both guys really showing that NXT was definitely able to hang with the 2 main roster brands. To finish this match, Cole dropped Dunne with the Panama Sunrise on the ring apron, drawing a holy from the crowd, and Dunne just barely made it back into the ring, beating the referee's 10 count. He snapped Cole's fingers and set up for the bitter end, but the title holder countered into a destroyer piledriver and finished him off with the last shot to the back of the head to retain the NXT Championship. So in match number 7, we seen The Fiend versus Daniel Bryan for the Universal Championship. Now this is probably the best match that The Fiend had had up to this point. Bryan was simply phenomenal in this match, exploding back into the match and turning the Chicago fans almost completely in his favour. He had the fans believing in him and wanting him to win the title. Considering how over Wyatt had been in his new Fiend role, this was no easy doing. The Fiend, though, he was perfect in this match as well. He withstood everything Bryan had thrown at him since his early flurry, but kept on coming like something out of one of them old horror films. The Fiend applied the mandible claw, but Bryan managed to reverse it into a rope-assisted triangle and then nearly won the title via a roll-up. But the Fiend was not to be denied as he applied the mandible claw once again to pick up the victory and to retain his title. So match number 8, and that would see us going back to the brands against each other, as the men's traditional tag team match saw Team Raw of Seth Rollins, Kevin Owens and Drew McIntyre, Randy Orton and Ricochet versus Team SmackDown of Roman Reigns, King Corbin, Shorty G, which is obviously Chad Gable for you that don't remember, Mustafa Ali and Braun Strowman versus Team NXT of Tommaso Ciampa, Walter, who's now Gunther, Damian Priest, Matt Riddle and Keith Lee. The question of Kevin Owens' brand loyalty hung over Team Raw from the start of the match, as Captain Seth Rollins openly asked him whether his teammate was devoted to the flagship or NXT after he had joined Team Ciampa at War Games just the night before. Like the women's, this was set up so that one member from each team was in the ring at any one time, like a triple threat. Much like Rhea Ripley was the most impressive in the earlier tag match, Keith Lee was the most impressive in this match as he was dominant throughout. Another finish to this match seen Raw's Seth Rollins versus SmackDown's Roman Reigns and NXT's Keith Lee. Rollins hit a frog splash on Lee, but he kicked out at 2. Keith Lee was then able to connect with a jackhammer on Rollins to eliminate him from the match, pitting the big guy versus the big dog as the final 2. Reigns quickly landed 2 straight Superman punches, but only managed a 2 count. Reigns then lined up and went for a spear, but was caught mid-spear by a spirit bomb from Keith Lee for a 2 count. Lee then took himself up to the top rope, but missed with a moonsault, and Reigns managed to nail him with a spear for SmackDown's second victory of the night. So this put NXT on a 3, SmackDown on 2, and Raw still with just a solo victory. So match number 9. Seen Brock Lesnar defend his Universal Championship in a no-holds-barred match against Rey Mysterio. And to be honest, this was probably the worst match of the night in all honesty. Lesnar quickly dominated the match, throwing around a much smaller opponent, before we seen Dominic Mysterio appear. This was back when Dominic wasn't part of the Judgment Day. He was still a good, sweet little son. He appeared with a towel, as it looked like he would save his father from the Beast. Instead, it caused a distraction long enough for Rey Mysterio to nail Brock Lesnar with a low blow, before a double 619 from the father and son combo, followed by a frog splash each, but that was only enough for a 2 count. Brock Lesnar then hit Dominic Mysterio with a released German suplex before planting Rey with an F5 for the victory. And to be honest with you, I'm just glad this one didn't close the pay-per-view. But in all honesty, the main event itself wasn't the greatest. But this would have been terrible to close the show. So match number 10 and our main event was probably the most hyped match leading into this pay-per-view. I had fans talking about it, who was going to end up on top. A lot of people did tune in to watch the pay-per-view, and this being one of the matches that definitely drew them in. It was definitely a match that drew me in as well, besides, like I said earlier, the mid-card title match. This battle of the women's champions, with Raw champion Becky Lynch versus NXT's champion Shayna Baszler versus SmackDown's champion Bayley. Now, like I say, this match unfortunately wasn't as great as I expected at the time, as these were probably the 3 best women wrestlers that each brand could offer, but it just didn't gel as expected. Don't get me wrong, it wasn't a terrible match. It wasn't as bad as Brock Lesnar versus Rey Mysterio, but it just could have been so much better. The thing though that did bug me about this match wasn't just that it main evented, but it was the fact that after Shayna Baszler tapped out Bayley for the win, she stood over Becky gloating, only to have Becky Lynch deliver a leg sweep, then drive her onto the announce table. Becky then delivered a leg drop through the announce table and stood tall with her title overhead as if she was in fact the victor. We just didn't need that at all, and unfortunately, seeing Becky standing tall at the end of the night after actually losing, yes, she wasn't pinned, but she wasn't the victor, it just left a sour taste in my mouth. But as much as it was annoying, I don't think it took away too much from the pay-per-view as a whole. So NXT ultimately won the night with a 4-2-1 victory. But what were your overall thoughts on this pay-per-view? For me, I do think it's definitely up there as one of the better Survivor Series pay-per-views. If you're looking at it from the very beginning to the very end, I'd probably say it's an around 8 out of 10. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. give it a ranking out of 10. Like I say, I'm going for 8 out of 10 as a whole, from the pre-show to the main event. I think it's an 8 out of 10. Let me know what yours are. Let me know your favourite matches, your least favourite matches. And as always, don't forget to hit that subscribe button today.